afternoon, everybody. Great to be here. Great to be back. I've been part of the BEA WORLD Festival family for years as a jury and advisory board member. Now as a guest or speaker, as you could say. What is our post-COVID fixing point? That's a pressing question for all of us and for some time already. I would like to share a few insights based on our yearly European industry survey and some other studies as well, and which hopefully helps you guiding your way into the near future. Very briefly about LiveCom Alliance, it was founded 5 years ago by myself on the belief to develop our pan-European industry by sharing best practices and insights and expertise from local level, bringing it to pan-European level. Our motto is to unite, learn, and inspire, and uniting currently 12 associations from all over Europe, and affecting over 1,000 agencies and companies. We have two partners in place, supporting partner, Best of Events, yearly show in Dortmund, and our market research partner, Rifle Institute, renowned German research institute. Directly from the start in 2016, we started to conduct our, let's say, study. The first 3 years more or less a snapshot of the industry, and since we were able to collaborate with Rifle Institute, we have a more comprehensive study. And we just before this summer we presented the results of the 2020 edition. The aim of the 2020 edition was to create that post-COVID fixing point, and unfortunately we're still not there. As I mentioned, quite unexpectedly, we're still in the middle of it. But nevertheless, interesting and relevant insights. I would like to share a few with you on highlights, obviously, and feel free to download the full report and read all about it. And I also found some extra interesting insights and topics from the State of the Event Industry report, from Event Managers blog, the Edelman Trust Barometer, and interesting stuff based on trust in the world. I will elaborate on this later on. The State of Creativity report, also a must-read, I would say, from LiveCom Alliance, and an interesting poll during Conventa crossover this summer in August. Let's take a look in the outcome of this year's study, of last year's study, I would say, presented just before summer, as I mentioned. A few business insights. Again, if you look into the database of respondents, we had about 300 respondents. From that, in total, over 1,000 member agencies and companies. Obviously, the results and the numbers are extrapolated. And if we look into turnover, employees, and projects, the numbers above the line are not that, well, let's say, relevant or interesting. That this is the, let's say, collective result of the LiveCom Alliance community. What's obviously more interesting is the numbers, the percentages below the line in white. And this is the change compared to last year, to 2019. So we have over almost 70% less turnover. We have over 50% loss of employees, and we have almost 70% less projects. As we know, the impact in this industry was huge, caused by COVID. And this is another interesting slide you can see here, where the impact was most, let's say, heavily, which category of the sector was impacted most heavily. And as you can see, fairs and exhibitions, well, again, obvious impact based on the fact that for fairs and exhibitions, we need live audience, we need a live event, and some other categories within our industry are more able to adapt into digital, online, and or hybrid. What we also checked was, okay, how did you let's say, what instruments you used or what activities you executed to face these consequences of COVID. And what's interesting was to see was that a big part of our industry refocused on clients, on client and customer relationships, on new customers. Another relevant topic, obviously, was the topic of agile project management, based on the fact that a lot of people were working from home, not only on client side, but also in the industry and within our companies and agencies. Development of new business areas, but was obviously also a very important topic, and it has all this has everything to do with new ways of realizing events we had to explore in order to face the consequences of the fact that we were not able to execute live events. Online events, hybrid events, discussed this topic over and over, obviously among us as a topic for years already, but thanks to this crisis, we were pushed forward in a very high speed. As you can see in this slide, we see that conferences, congresses, but also internal events and corporate events were, well, quite not, I would not say easily, but were able to adapt towards digital formats. And at the other hand of the spectrum, you see that fairs and exhibitions and for example brand parks and also more or less public events, it was really tough to adapt to digital and or hybrid. And this is another interesting topic connected to that change. We see that if we look at profitability, but also into strategic importance, we see that live events are far and foremost the most important is the most important category in order to do a profitable business and be of strategic importance. This has been really challenging if you look into digital and online events. This was an interesting slide from the Event Managers blog report I found. Here you can see, and we can skip the details, but in high over you see that obviously in 2020 most of events were adapted into pivoted to virtual, and then in this year we saw first quarter, second quarter, and then revival of live in the third quarter, and a lot of hope in the fourth final quarter, and also a lot of events, by the way, in the last quarter. But then again, a bit depending where we are in Europe, we are shut down again, and we are back from live into the virtual stuff. But more interesting is that if you look into the right graphic, we see that about, well, let's say a quarter of these events pivoted to virtual were not able to meet expectations. So we're also a little bit struggling with this. And at the other hand, we have almost 60% were pivoted successfully or even exceeded expectations. Well, if we look into the timeline for hosting in-person events, then you see here that based on the moment when you ask the audience, when do you expect events to be in person again, then obviously we see some changes from the third quarter into the fourth quarter where we are now. But as we all know, it's a bit of depending where you are in Europe. For example, here in the Netherlands, we're shut down again, and in many other countries in Europe as well. And well, this brings us to the poll I came across during Conventa crossover in August. Again, this was about, let's say, 5 months ago. And during this poll, the audience was asked, okay, if we look into the pre-COVID and post-COVID situation, how many events you regularly do or execute per year? And you see here that the group who has 6 to 10 events per year was about 30%. It was pre-COVID, then obviously post-COVID it was half, about 17. Over 20 events it was 25%. Post-COVID it was back to 11. Again, we can mention all these percentages, but the message is clear, especially about, again, a half year ago, we were not that positive, and a lot of people expected the number of events going down. Another interesting poll question was the format, the setting, and you see here that pre-COVID, 80% was organized live, and was also half back to 38% post-COVID. So hybrid obviously went up um, substantially, online went up substantially, and obviously, and this goes for all these kind of research and studies and numbers. It's conducted in a moment, and obviously a lot of, well, let's say atmosphere, sentiment of that moment is, you can see back, you can see this in the results. But nevertheless, it's a sign, and it's interesting to see what's happening in the world. If you look into formats, we already discussed it a little bit. You see here that from the study of event managers blog, it was smaller in size. We hear that a lot. Shorter in duration, more local, well, virtual and or hybrid, or no change. And you see here some changes between the state of the event industry report by event managers blog and the poll of Conventa crossover in August this year. But again, in general, you could say there is a trend going on in, okay, we should organize events, live events, smaller in size, shorter in time, more local and regional, and, well, still a lot of expectations about hybrid events. And we'll talk about it later on a little bit. This was I think personally a nice quote from Jens Meyer during the Conventa crossover event, by the way, from Jack Morton, all in the discussion of the future and the potential of hybrid events. And he mentioned there are no virtual, hybrid, or even live experiences, only good and bad ones. And, well, you can agree or not agree or have your opinion on this. The interesting part of this remark for me personally was, okay, maybe we should not stay discussing this dividing our industry in, let's say, three categories. We are in the business of taking up a challenge from our client and transform that challenge into an experiential event. And whether it's online, hybrid, or live, we do what's necessary and what's suitable for that client, for that target audience, and in the phase we are in the world, if we look into the health situation. Personally, I got the idea, and that's what I'm hearing around more and more, is that the, let's say, live hybrid events, so doing a live event with a live audience and an online audience simultaneously, uh, uh, is something we had to do in let's say an in-between phase, going from live to digital, and again from digital to back to live again. I also encounter a lot of hybrid fatigue in a sense of that it's very intensive in budget. You're in fact you're executing not live, but two events at the same time, two budgets, two audience. It's complex. At the other hand, you see that more and more we do understand now that the live event is a real good opportunity to create your content and use that for let's say more like a campaign, online or digital campaign, afterwards or around your live events. So that could be an interesting discussion for the near future about which way to go. Some other interesting insights nog. Budget trends, well, that's obvious. If you look into the right graphic, you see the turnover expectations. The question was, okay, when do you expect turnover to be back on pre-COVID levels? And you see here that the expectations for this current year is, well, very low. Even for 22, it's quite limited to reaching up to 80% of the pre-COVID levels, and only in 23 we expect levels to be back at the level we were used to, or were we aiming for in the situation just before COVID. In our survey, we have also quite an extensive part on employment, facts and figures. Again, interesting management information. You can find a lot there. A few highlights based on this part of the survey, and obviously, as we all know, this is a real challenge now for industry and many sectors, by the way, but will be for the future and probably longer than 1 year. As you can see in this graphics, we lost almost 50% of our full-time employees, and we almost lost 3/4 of our part-time employees. And if you look into the connection with freelancers, obviously a type of staff we are used to work with in our industry, you see here that a few went down also, because also you saw that especially in the start of this crisis when the business dropped and went to full stop, freelancers were also stopped. It was tough part of the industry to be in, and we lost a lot of freelancers to other types of business, and it's challenging to get them back. And obviously, we saw some increase in freelancer hours on event and project management and digital services, obviously, because that was the new area we went to work in. Forecast employment. Well, again, this is a little bit, let's say, old information, or at least dated, because we are now heading for Christmas holidays. This was released just before summer. We see here that almost 50 to 75% of these companies do not expect any change in regard to full-time employees, and a third will increase the freelance hours. That's obviously connected. And when you're low in fixed staff, you have to compensate with freelance hours in order to be able to be flexible and be able to organize the events when they started again to be organized in the third quarter. What we saw over the past years, especially after summer, was that based on the fact that well, the world looked brighter somewhere during summer. Again, depending on what country you were in, agencies, companies were started to hire again. We had a very brief lift off of life again, but it was for quite a short period. So now we have let's say, quite a dilemma in, okay, should we keep our staff or should we let it go again to be able to to face the consequences again of lower numbers of events. Briefly about working from home experiences. Obviously, we see here a lot of advantages in work-life balance. At the same time, we see the consequences of losing the connection with the brand or losing the connection with the organization, brand and organization values. This is again, it's an interesting report to check out. The Edelman Trust Barometer is executed globally every year, and it's about the trust in the world, and this was one of the aspects mentioned, and therefore I connected to our survey. You see here quite a status quo situation in, okay, should we continue to work from home or should we return to the office? And you see on both sides that the audience thinks, okay, we have a better work-life balance from home. At the other hand, we have a better work-life balance working at the office in order to be able to leave work and not get it mixed up in your private situation. And obviously this is something we have to take into account, but it's also something I am convinced of. This gives us a huge opportunity for our industry, because as I mentioned, the connection with employees is getting lost. Organizations want to be connected, want to be able to to bring the company culture or the organizational culture to the employees, and the same for relations and clients, by the way. And I think the past months, 2-3 months, has proven that organizations are um, longing for face-to-face communication and contact. As soon as we were able to organize, it was a huge and very speedy liftoff of live events again. Very briefly about future trends and challenges. Obviously, digitization is in the trend list. Hybrid online, discussed already quite briefly. Health issues is another interesting thing, and obviously sustainability is in it. If you look into the health issues, I found also this graphic. It's again from Event Manager's blog. What we see around the world now is that we are getting into some COVID and non-COVID seasons. What we see now is that clients, organizations are looking into the period which is more safe to organize live events. And we already hear signals about, okay, we have a season for live events from April, May up to early November. And the other months are only fit and possible for digital and online. And that's, well, interesting to take into account. Obviously, this leaves us with another extra challenge on the staff issues, but also on capacity issues in general. We have already now huge challenges on finding caterers, venues, and technical support, and so on. And when the season is pressed into a even shorter season, it will be even more challenging. But it's interesting to take into account. And I also hear a lot of signals about clients who are just looking around the map, for especially also in Europe, and see, okay, we have, for example, now in the Netherlands, we have very limited possibilities to organize events, or at least with a lot of restrictions. So clients think, okay, no, thank you, and just look at the map. Okay, well, where is it now at this moment appropriate, and where are we able to organize safe events, and the infections levels are low? Okay, and we go there. So it's people are choosing destinations and seasons based on the health situation in the world. A few additional insights to close up with. As I mentioned, Edelman Trust Barometer is measuring trust all over the world, and I think this is an interesting one, and it's also interesting for our business. You see here in this graphic that the trust in information sources are at record lows. So we just don't trust media any longer, and it's, well, tough, but it's also, I think we recognize this. We are very skeptical. We are in a skeptical mode, I would say. But it's interesting to see, because if you look into these kind of media channels and the very low trust here, then you could say that we are longing for authentic communication and authentic messaging. And I think this is really, as I already mentioned before, this is very much connected to the very quick revival of live events over the past 2 months. And you see here that organizations and brands want to tell their brand story, their organization story, but they want to do it live, because then it's authentical, and it's a sincere message, instead of the media we just don't trust. Same in regard to spokespeople. So it's what you see in this graphics, that the spokespeople are lose credibility, and it's also a tough cookie to to tackle. Even for CEOs, it's tough to keep up their credibility. But at the same time, connected to the previous graphic, I think challenges for us, challenges for storytelling, for authentic communication. Only 1 in 4 have good information hygiene, and this is also connected to the previous one. We are totally overloaded with communication. We just don't know any longer what to trust. And if you look into internal audience, your staff, your personnel, either you look into the audience for brands, consumers, fans, or B2B, if you look into relations and clients, everyone is struggling with these kind of, let's say, high over challenges. And so low trust and a lack of information hygiene will increase the relevance for, well, authentic information, live storytelling, and so on. To close up my presentation with 2 slides from the State of Creativity report by Alliance. Creativity is obviously a huge topic and value of our business. This graphic shows the disconnected view on how much brands value creativity. If you look at the upper line, it's the dark green line. You see that the brands organizations value creativity for 67%, and the organizations, so the industry side, only for 17. So you see here a very interesting disconnection. Same for the other one. This is also about creativity, and it has to do with the priority of investing in creativity. And also here you see that organization and brands value creativity, use creativity, and invest in creativity for brand building and for brand awareness, 69%, enhancing customer journey and brand experience. That's obviously in our corner, 63%. And the agency, so the industry, values this quite some numbers lower. So this is interesting to take into account. And for me, these are, well, let's say, signs of also hope and signs to trust on in regards to our field of play. Summarizing a few, well, things I would like to share, and I already mentioned, but is here in an overview. Resilience, innovation, entrepreneurial power is in our DNA. That's what we saw. That was our answer to the huge impact. So keep up the spirit, I would say, for the industry. There are no virtual, hybrid, or even live experiences, only good ones and bad ones. In regards to the hybrid, online, digital, live discussion, health issues, non-COVID seasonal booking, and choice of destinations will be around for some time. Take that into account. Briefly, in addition to the sustainability theme, it's not only about the environmental theme, it's also about investing in sustainable relationships with all stakeholders. So it's clients, it's partners, so it's the whole chain. We will need each other for the upcoming, I would say, years, and it will be challenging to survive this together, let's say. Yeah, and don't forget talent, because we lost a lot, and we are in need of a lot of new talent, and due to the huge scarcity ahead, already mentioned. Low trust and the communication overload and disconnection, from cultural values for organization and brands pushes the need for authentic live communication and storytelling. The creative industry has been bruised by the pandemic, but in all the chaos lies opportunity. Amazing and beautiful words. And so true, creativity can bloom under the toughest conditions. Don't forget. And to close up with, brands, organizations, people do need experience-driven communication more than ever, I would say. And we are the artisans to realize it. Thank you very much. And in case there are any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. And through the QR code, you can download the full report of our 2020 survey.